Islam Makhachev is just about as terrifying a fighter as the lightweight division has seen since, well, his friend and training partner Khabib Nurmagomedov. There's just something frightening about this Dagestan contender's ability to totally nullify your game, and the craziest thing is that we haven't even seen Islam really tested yet. So for this video, we're going to take a look at why his fellow lightweights are likely quite worried about this guy and his potential. This is why fighters are really scared of Islam Makhachev. His fighting style. To kick things off, we have the obvious answer. Just like his gym mate Khabib Nurmagomedov before him, as soon as you get in there with Islam Makhachev, there's a very good chance that you'll spend the entire fight trying to simply survive. His smothering style of wrestling and grappling generally allows him to dictate where exactly the fight takes place, and unless you have some wild submission skills off your back, your years of Muay Thai or boxing aren't going to matter in the slightest once he gets a hold on you. Even if you're a very strong wrestler or a BJJ black belt, there are levels of this, and Islam is more than likely far ahead of you. Guys like Drew Dober and Dan Hooker were left without the use of their striking skills when they took on Makhachev. And even excellent grapplers like Arman Tsarukyan and Davi Ramos were unable to get their games going. Charles Oliveira does offer up quite a few interesting challenges for Makhachev to overcome, but there's a good chance that Islam will be able to slow things down and achieve some real control if he can find the takedown. Oliveira has also been submitted before, which is always worth considering. His ranking. During Islam's rise through the lightweight roster, one of the many issues he had was securing opponents who were willing to fight him. The problem wasn't always that he was a terrible stylistic matchup for most guys, but instead, it was that he didn't have a ranking within the 155-pound division. Imagine you were safely ranked at number 11 or 12 in the division and you receive a fight offer from an unranked, informed Dagestani wrecking machine. Seems a bit too risky, right? Well, this was a real problem for the lightweights in the UFC, and it's also the reason why people believe that Islam was being ducked during his early career. When he did finally get a number beside his name, it was more bad luck than anything else that his fight with Rafael dos Anjos fell through on 3 separate occasions. But if you're going to sign on the dotted line to take on a guy like Islam, it really makes a lot more sense if he is ranked ahead of you. Thankfully, if he does manage to get his hands on UFC gold, this won't be a problem anymore, given his placement in the division. And if he can pull off the win against Charles Oliveira, he'll likely break out as a major superstar, and trust us, if that happens, there will be no shortage of top fighters who will want to take him on. Team Khabib. This next one might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but for any fighter who decides to take on Islam Makhachev, you're not only signing to fight one of the most technically skilled fighters in the sport today. On top of that, you're also becoming an enemy of one of the most determined and passionate fan bases in the sport. But if you go down the route of actually trying to talk trash, there's the small matter of Islam's teammates to contend with. Remember the whole chaos after UFC 229, where Khabib vaulted over the side of the cage? Well, it probably won't be that bad, but there's no denying that Makhachev comes with an entire posse of potential enemies. From Khabib and his training partners to his manager Ali Abdelaziz, a man who will take shots at literally anyone online. These guys don't play around. And when you become the next opponent of anyone on Team Khabib, if you're not careful, you could make an enemy of an entire army. His finishing rate. If there was one criticism you could level at Islam during the earliest part of his UFC career, it's that he wasn't exactly known for his ability to finish fights. 3 finishes and 7 wins isn't a terrible record by any means, but it was pretty fair to say that Makhachev was seen as a more conservative fighter than Khabib in these early years. Where Nurmagomedov would bulldoze his opponents, Islam often opted for a much more measured approach. But after his year-and-a-half-long layoff from the sport, his return in 2021 saw him showcasing much more hunger for the finish. His next 4 victories all came by way of stoppage, including 2 in the very first round. Momentum has been building behind this guy for years, but it really does seem like Makhachev is hitting his prime at the perfect time. And with a fight against the most dangerous finisher in UFC history ahead of him, it looks like the UFC 280 main event is set to be an absolute treat. Well-rounded. Javier Mendez has been quoted as saying that Islam Makhachev is a far better striker than Khabib ever was, and looking over their careers, it's easy to see that Makhachev is the more calm and technical of the two. And for his opponents, it's pretty clear that he isn't going to leave the same type of openings on the feet that Khabib did. To be fair to Nurmagomedov though, it's not like anyone could ever capitalize, but for Islam, he definitely seems like a far more natural striker, and in the past, we've seen him use his kickboxing to take rounds. And when you factor in the looming threat of the takedown, it all just opens up opportunities on the feet for him to land. He might not look like the most physically imposing force in the sport, but if you need proof of Makhachev's knockout power, look no further than his first-round decimation of Gleison Tibau. Islam can crack, and he can do with a pretty high level of accuracy. Most of Charles Oliveira's recent opponents have been able to stun or even drop the champion during their fights, and though Makhachev's best route to victory will likely be on the mat, don't make the mistake of forgetting just how well-rounded this dude is. His striking defense. Okay, picture the scene. You're a striker, and you sign on the dotted line to take on Islam Makhachev for your next fight. You know he's got some incredible takedowns in his arsenal, and if he does get you to the ground, your chances drop significantly. But while the fight is standing, you know that you have the advantage, that all it will take is one clean shot for him to realize that he's swimming in deep waters. Well, unfortunately, Makhachev has some of the craziest striking defense stats we have ever seen. And yes, while his 0.84 strikes absorbed per minute is the lowest in UFC history, a lot of you will be quick to point out that a powerful wrestler and grappler is obviously going to be hit less. But it's Makhachev's striking defense rate of 68% that really paints the full picture. Not only do his opponents not have many chances to punch him because of his immense top control, but when they do, they miss on 68% of their attempts. For context, if you're over 70% in this category, you're likely in the top 10 or 11 in UFC history in terms of defensive stats. Seriously, this guy is just a total nightmare to deal with, and the numbers certainly back it up. And that will just about do it for this video. But what's your prediction for the UFC 280 main event? Will it be the overbearing technical skills of Makhachev, or the total chaos of Oliveira that brings home gold? Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. See you next time!